All right, guys, we're live. We got people hopping on. Yay.
All
Okay.
right. Well, good stuff. Welcome, everybody. Dr. Saunders is outside with a beautiful cloudscape behind him, an American flag. And what else you got going on there, Dr. Scott?
Well, I'm at my dad's house, and I used to build houses. That was while I was going through college, I built tons of houses. I built my own house afterward. I built 4-story condominiums. I did just about everything. And so if you look up there, that's the roof up there. I'm putting a new roof on my dad's house.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
So did you have to take off a layer of shingles? Or?
Yeah, we had to take the whole top off and redo the decking. We didn't have to sheet the whole thing, but we had to replace a lot of it, the bad stuff. But considering it's like 50 years old, it's okay.
Well, that's pretty good.
Yeah, this is Ontario, California.
Ah, very nice.
It's pretty nice here today. Where
is Ontario? Is that kind of by LA?
Yeah, it's Riverside, San Bernardino area.
Okay. Is there an airport there?
Yes, the Ontario International Airport.
Yeah, really? I have flown in a few times there.
Well, good. I really like this room that you're in right now. Like, look at that sweet TV on the wall. So we could superimpose our webinars playing in the background on that thing. That would be pretty sweet.
I don't think we could. It's not digital.
Well, Cedric could work some technological wonders maybe to do that. So
digital analog transformation.
Well, all right. Well, welcome everybody. So today, welcome to the Fixed Blood Sugar Barton webinar. And I'm Joe Barton with Barton Publishing. We have Leslie Prinz here as well, who's running the controls and taking your questions and filling in when I'm gone on miscellaneous adventures. And we have the good doctor, Dr. Scott Saunders here, as always. And so this is our weekly webinar every Tuesday at noon Central that you can join by visiting bartonwebinar.com, registering on the link right there. And you can join us live on Zoom, as many of you are doing right now. So hello to everybody. Glad to see a bunch of our regular visitors and attendees here. And give a quick shout out to Bonnie and Alan and Bill and Carol and Cheryl and Dennis and Gordon and all sorts of people here. So hello everybody. We'd ask you all to chime in and tell us what you ate for breakfast, but we'd be here all day. So we won't do that today. But today's topic is something we have not really covered before. And this is an interesting one because I deal with this myself. It is histamines. So Dr. Saunders, what in the world? What are histamines?
Okay. Can I tell my story?
Please.
This is a really interesting story. Okay. So one of my patients, I got a call from Virginia. So I'm in California, I got a call from Virginia. And they say, we'd like our son to see you. I say, well, that's a long trip. And so, okay, how about like over the phone or, the Zoom call or something? So I said, okay. Actually, I've never seen this kid. We didn't see him on the Zoom call. I talked to the mom and the dad. I've never seen the kid. He's 2 years old. And from the day he was born, he didn't sleep. He didn't take naps. When they tried to put him down in bed, he would cry and cry and cry. He needed to be held all the time. So the parents weren't getting any sleep. And they went from doctor to doctor. And then he was getting rashes all over. He'd have diaper rashes constantly. They'd go away, come back, go away and come back. And then he'd get rashes on his body. And then the final straw was they took him to the doctor with a black stool. And the doctor tested it positive for blood. So this kid is bleeding internally. And the doctor says, well, that happens. So they had an appointment to go see a gastroenterologist, a pediatric gastroenterologist. They were going to put a tube down his throat and try and look at his stomach. Because when it's black, it's usually coming from the stomach. And when it's black, there's usually a lot of acid too, because acid turns blood black. So then the mom, her mother, so the grandmother of the child is my patient. And so she said, you got to call my doctor. You got to call him because, you're not getting answers there. So they called me, and they went through his whole history, everything I told you about. And they said, and as I'm thinking about it, the rashes, the stomach, the little voice of providence, when the Holy Spirit tells you something, it was like the light went off. It was like, bling, this is a histamine problem. Well, I had never heard of a histamine problem in a little kid before. I'd heard of people having, older adults, they get histamine problems with mast cell degranulation issues. And that's what that is like allergies, but they don't necessarily have to have allergies to get that problem. Well, it turns out that this kid was born with an enzyme abnormality that doesn't allow him to break down histamine in his intestines. So the food he's eating contains histamine. Even the breast milk from his mother, from day one, he was getting this excess histamine, and his intestines aren't breaking it down, so he's absorbing it. And guess what histamine does? This is a really interesting list of things. Histamine is the neurotransmitter in the brain for alertness. It prevents you from sleeping. So if you've had sleeping problems, histamine is a common issue, especially the people who say, I have never slept well. And, even when I do go to sleep, I wake up tired. And even if I sleep 10 hours, I wake up tired. And because histamine will prevent you from getting deep sleep, even if you are knocked out. So if you you're knocked out, but you're not getting deep sleep, you can be asleep for a long period of time. It's not going to be restful sleep. So sleep issues, that's a big one. Not for everyone, but that's a big one because it's in the brain. Problems with the autonomic nervous system. So people get hot and cold intolerance, and they get cold hands and cold feet, and everybody goes, oh, it's your thyroid. And they start popping thyroid pills. And well, that works a little, but not really. It doesn't really fix the problem. And then chronic allergies, runny nose, rashes on your skin, itchiness all over. That's all histamine intolerance. The other thing histamine does is it stimulates the stomach to produce more acid. So you get more acid production when you have this excess histamine. So what's that? Well, acid reflux, gas, bloating. The acid goes into your small intestine, which is not supposed to be acidic. Normally, the acid goes into your intestines after you've eaten, and the pancreas puts out bicarbonate, sodium bicarbonate, to neutralize the acid and make a and then the bile acids, it gets neutralized, making a slightly alkaline environment where the enzymes can then function. But if it's all acid, it's not going to function. So then you have all these intestinal problems. So think about it: sleep problems, rash problems, itchy problems, allergy problems, problems with your stomach, and then problems with your autonomic nervous system, palpitations of your heart, changes in your temperature, and not being able to sleep. So all of those issues, and there's actually more minor ones too, with immune system dysfunction and all of that. So, so with that constellation of symptoms, we put the child, well, I told the parents, put the child on a low histamine diet. Now, histamine is everywhere. It's a very small neurotransmitter. It's made out of histidine, which is an amino acid, a single amino acid, and it is found in bacteria and plants and animals, and so it's in your food. And when you eat it, you normally have an enzyme in your intestine. It's one of your digestive enzymes that your intestinal cells make that neutralizes the histamine. Because when you make histamine in your body, it has to do a certain function and then be gone. So it lasts for seconds in the body normally. If you can't break it down and it's lasting for minutes and going around your whole body, it's going to wreak havoc. It's going to cause all these problems. It has to be released, do its thing, and then be broken down and be gone. That's what histamine is supposed to do. When it hangs around, then that's when all the problems are created. So if you have this excess histamine, you could have one of those problems, or two of those problems, or three of those problems, or a whole list of problems like Quentin, the kid, had, and you would never know it. You would never know why it was unless you go on a low histamine diet. And the reason for that is because if you're not taking in any excess histamine, that'll lower the total amount of histamine. Now, this is the funny way it works. This enzyme functions at, let's say it's 100% level. It's this much. But your enzyme functions, it has a dysfunction like the child maybe be functioning at 20%. It's there, but it's not functioning all the way. So it's easy to go over the edge. So just a little bit extra histamine, and now it's beyond what the enzyme can function. And then the histamine gets all over the body and causes problems. So if you get your histamine below the level that the enzyme can function and break down histamine, because remember, it's everywhere, you can't get rid of it. So, but if you can get your level down, then the enzyme starts functioning and breaks it down in seconds, and then it's gone, and then you don't have the issues anymore. So 3 days later, I got a call from the mom. Oh my gosh, he slept all night. He took a nap, and she said the weirdest thing, he has always been very hyperactive. He's like running all day long. Remember, histamine is the neurotransmitter in your brain for alertness. So he's like, this kid is like all the time. She said it was the weirdest thing. He sat and played with the toy on the floor for more than 30 minutes. He'd never done that before. He was 2 years old, had never done that before.
Wow.
So when you get the right level, when things start functioning well, they just start functioning. And it's quick. It's not like you have allergies and you have to wait. Like we were talking about food sensitivities, and you have to wait for 2 to 4 weeks before you see the reaction go away. It kind of gradually goes away. That's not this. This is when you get that histamine below the level of the functioning enzyme, boom, immediately it just starts working. And so it's quite amazing. So since then, since studying for Quentin to look at that, I started doing research on it. I'm reading about it, I'm reading all kinds of things. When you get your histamine below the level of the enzyme, it functions better. The enzyme actually functions better. It's kind of like a car, the way they described it. If you overload the car, it just won't go. Your car's just like on, down, it won't go. But as soon as you bring the load off the car to the level where it can drive, it can take off and go. And so you have to get that level down. And the diet is key, because when people get their histamine low, then the enzyme functions better, and then they function better, and everything works better, just like with Quentin, the 2-year-old boy. So my daughter called me, and she said, oh, I don't know what to do with this kid. And I've been with this kid, my grandson, and he has to be bounced to sleep every night. He will not go to sleep, and he's crying and crying and crying. It was always a very difficult thing to get him to sleep. And then he would wake up in the middle of the night, keep them up for 2 or 3 hours. It's similar kinds of issues. Well, she called me and said he's getting swelling around his mouth. I'm going, oh my gosh, that's histamine. Histamine causes swelling, like edema, like if you've ever seen urticaria or hives, that's a histamine thing that causes that. Itching is a histamine thing. So I said, you know what? Put him on a low histamine diet, see what happens. And it worked. A few days later, he was sleeping through the night. He would fall asleep more easily. He would take a nap. And he didn't get any more rashes in his bum. He was getting diaper rashes, no more rashes. And he was a year and a half old. And he had a similar kind of issue. And then I had some adults come in with similar kinds of problems. One of them said, I just can't adjust my thyroid right. I can't get my temperature right. And I said, well, try the low histamine diet. And then I've done tests on people, and they have high histamine levels. And I'm like, oh my gosh, do this low histamine diet. And with amazing results. It's been really good. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, wow, that's really interesting. I listened to those symptoms that you described, and I've had several of those in the past, and like I kind of wonder what my histamine level might be at, and the correlation of that. So like, because I've taken antihistamines, I mean that's like allergy pills typically, right?
Yeah, yeah, but antihistamines block the histamine receptors,
Okay.
but they don't get rid of the histamine. You still have high histamine levels. So antihistamines are not the answer to this. It's
So is
bringing down the histamine.
so the enzyme itself, can you like supplement or do something to improve the enzyme?
Yes, yes, you can. Okay, so there are several things you can do to improve the enzyme. So if you're missing DAO, that's the one in the intestines that this kid was missing. You can actually take that enzyme. It's a digestive enzyme that you can find online. I haven't seen it at any stores, but I know you can get it online from several sources. I found multiple sources. And it's 10,000 units. They're all pretty much 10,000 units. And you just take one with every meal, every time you eat. You don't eat snacks. Okay. And then somebody asked here on the panel, somebody asked about what is the low histamine diet? Essentially, think about fresh foods. So anything that is old or fermented or aged is not good. If it's leftovers in the refrigerator, it probably has a lot of histamine in it. If your fish was thawed out yesterday, it has a lot of histamine in it. If you go and catch the fish and bring it home and cook it within a half an hour, it's fine. That's not a problem. But if you leave it sitting out in the refrigerator, then that's not a good idea. If you get salmon from the ships in Alaska that they catch the salmon and they process it and freeze it on the ship, and then it goes off. Those that kind is actually okay. But if you get the salmon that's been sitting in a fish market for a while, if you go into your grocery store and you see all that beautiful looking salmon out there, not good.
It's like a chemical process that's happening in the food, like it's slowly fermenting or changing a bit.
Yeah, it's the bacteria. It's the bacteria make histidine, which is the amino acid that's normally found in meat and all proteins, is converting that into histamine. And so, but it's not just fish. I'm picking on fish because that's a common one, and you can actually get histamine toxicity from eating fish that's been sitting out as a like a food poisoning kind of issue, stomach upset, vomiting and diarrhea and all that, and rash all over. But it's not an allergy to fish. People who often say they're allergic to fish, it's not. They just have a histamine problem. Aged beef. A lot of beef is aged. You have to be really careful not to get aged beef. You have to get, if it's frozen, that's okay. But if it's fresh off the cow, it's okay. So the other part of the histamine diet is there are certain things that cause the release of histamine. So if you have avocados, bananas, and egg whites, for example, are going to be on the list. Even if they don't contain histamine, they may make your mast cells internally release more histamine. So here's an important lesson. It's additive. If you tolerate sauerkraut, no problem. And avocados, no problem. And then you have avocados and sauerkraut, boom, you're over. And now you're going to have a reaction and a problem. So like what you were talking about, Joe, when you have, you've had some of those symptoms, and you want to know what your histamine level is. Well, the histamine level is changing constantly. And it's only when you get over the level of your enzyme when the symptoms come on.
Okay, this might sound gross, but you mentioned the black poop. But like, is that a sign that you've got too much going on, the color of your poop?
Not the color per se, but if you have bleeding in your stomach, which will cause black tarry stools, sometimes diarrhea, then the black is, if it's blood, because there's other reason for having black stool. There was somebody that had, if you drink Pepto-Bismol, you have black stool too. That can do it too. And that's not from a histamine problem. But a black stool from blood could mean you have too much acid, which could mean you have too much histamine. And if you've ever heard of Tagamet or Zantac, cimetidine, ranitidine, famotidine, those medications are just histamine blockers in the stomach. That's what they do. That's how they work. That's how they prevent ulcers.
Okay. Was it Zantac that's on the list that I'm hearing commercials from about lawsuits and all that, like causing cancer maybe?
Yeah. So they found long-term use of Zantac is related to cancer. And there's a good reason for that. If you block your histamine receptors, then there are certain inflammatory things that your body doesn't do well. And one of them is get rid of cancer. So it's not a good long-term solution. You know, taking these pills, the drugs, like allergy drugs and stomach, these, whether it's Tagamet or Zantac or whatever, taking them for long periods of time is not good. But I'll tell you that that little 2-year-old kid with a bleeding ulcer in his stomach, the first thing I did is put him on cimetidine, Tagamet, to block that histamine until he was on a really good low histamine diet, and then we took him off it. And he was doing very well.
Teresa says, doctor's looking very casual today. She missed the beginning where we were outside with showing everybody the roof and the new roof you're putting on at your dad's house and stuff. So yeah, you'll have to watch the replay of that. That was pretty cool.
I'm
wearing my hoodie for the Lynx Brandon Valley soccer team. We got a playoff game tonight. We're gonna play the Roosevelt Rough Riders. We're gonna kick their butts. We're going to state, baby.
Good luck with that.
Thank you. My oldest son is on the team. He's so yeah, I'm excited about that. Anyways, yeah, we're a little casual today. That's okay. It's all about the information. Like, hey, we're getting some good stuff here. And so people might be wondering, all right, so histamine, like, does that matter to me? Like most people here have blood sugar and diabetes issues. Is there a connection there?
Probably not. Probably not. This is a different enzyme. However, remember we talked about having stress, making your diabetes worse. We had a whole day on stress, and that's all we talked about. Guess what stress does? It lowers your function of your DAO enzyme and raises your histamine levels. Well, that makes perfect sense. If you're really stressed and you need to be awake and alert, you need histamine to make you awake and alert. That's what it does. So the body is it's a perfect machine. But it's really important that you understand that stress can prevent you from sleeping, because it can raise your histamine levels in your brain, make you more awake and alert, and prevent you from sleeping. That's one of the things it does.
Yeah.
So at the same time, it raises your blood sugar levels because it makes you resistant to insulin too. So the way stress works, there's not a direct connection, but you know, everything is related in the body. It's just amazing.
Well, so this is probably a softball question for you, but like, tell us about how fasting affects histamines.
Okay. So whenever you have inflammation in your intestines, you lower your DAO enzyme. The enzyme that breaks down histamine is produced less when you have inflammation in your intestines. To repair inflammation in your intestines, you have to have an empty stomach. The empty stomach allows your intestines, well, your whole body, to go into repair mode and start fixing those cells and getting rid of inflammation, so that you then can make more DAO and everything will function better. So yes, fasting does work. It does help. The other thing fasting does is it lowers your adrenal hormones, your cortisol, the stress hormones, so that your DAO functions better. So in the long run, fasting periodically is going to help this kind of thing. It's going to help you to keep your histamine levels lower by improving the function of that DAO enzyme.
Okay. Excellent. Well, good stuff. Do we have any questions, Leslie, that we want to start getting into, or we could dive into some of those?
Well, I think he's mentioned this a couple times since this has come in, but just can you say the name of the enzyme again for us?
Okay, DAO, diamine oxidase, DAO. And if you look up DAO enzyme supplement, you will find a ton on Google or Amazon. I found it on Amazon. I found it on Google. I found it on other doctors' websites that they sell it to. It's not that you always have to take that, unless you're somebody like the kid in Virginia that I was talking about, who may have to take it the rest of his life because, frankly, he just doesn't make a very good enzyme. But most people, if you get your diet properly corrected and get rid of extra allergies, remember, oh, I wanted to say that before, it's additive. So if I was saying how you can add up like the sauerkraut and the avocados, but what if you're okay with sauerkraut and avocados together, but you're also having allergies this month? And you know, the pollen allergies, and so you're making a bunch of histamine, you're releasing it in your body too from the white blood cells. So now you have allergies and you have coming from the food. So then that's all adding on top of each other and now you have a problem where you didn't before. So all of it is additive. So that's why the food thing is really important, and treating your allergies. So I want to go over several things. One is you can get the DAO enzyme, that's good. Now, how do you get your own enzyme to function better? If you lack copper, copper is not a common deficiency, but I've seen several cases of it. In fact, one young man who came in with a histamine problem did have a copper deficiency. If you have a copper deficiency, there's not enough copper, the DAO won't work. So you'll make it, but it won't work. So adding copper, and don't freak out and start taking a ton of copper. 2 milligrams once a day for about 30 days, and then once a week after that. That's all. Just it's not, copper is not something that's easy to get deficient in because it's found everywhere. Plus, you know, most of our pipes are copper pipes, and we're actually getting trace amounts of copper in our water and all over the place anyway. The other one is quercetin. We've talked about quercetin before with allergies, but quercetin prevents your mast cells, your white blood cells, from releasing histamine, so that you keep the histamine in and you don't drive up your levels. Remember, it's additive. And so this blocks that from adding on the internal, from adding on to the external. So that's quercetin. And quercetin is about 1,000 milligrams a day. People usually have pretty good results with that. But I had somebody with bad asthma who needed 6,000 milligrams a day. So she was taking 2,000 milligrams 3 times a day during the day, and that kept her asthma, her allergic asthma, down. So sometimes people need more, and that's okay. That's fine.
Yeah, you told me to take some quercetin when I was having some coughing and getting over like kind of a sinus and yeah, all that after my camp experience. And then the NAC is N-acetylcysteine. Is that involved in this at all?
Probably not. The cysteine is for making glutathione to get the inflammation down. So it might work. I don't know of any research. I don't know anything about that. But the glutathione does lower inflammation, which may help the histamine, because histamine is often released in cases of inflammation. So I talked about copper, I talked about quercetin. There's one more enzyme that you can't buy. It's primarily found in your kidneys and liver and brain, and it breaks down histamine. Well, it doesn't break it down. It actually adds on a methyl group to histamine. You've heard of methylation? Well, if you have poor methylation, you may not be able to methylate histamine. And so you may not break it down very well, which causes you to have problems with histamine problems. So one of my patients that I mentioned before had bladder problems. He's a kid, he's 17 years old, and he has, what do they call it? Irritable bladder? No, it's not. Bladder irritability. Yeah. Interstitial cystitis. And he went from doctor to doctor to urologist. He had scopes put into his bladder. He had all this stuff done. Nobody could find anything wrong. It all looked perfectly fine. And he's missing an enzyme called HNMT, histamine N-methyltransferase. That methyl group that is put onto the histamine inactivates it. So, and that's in the kidneys. The kidneys and the liver do that. They don't break it down. They actually just inactivate it by adding a methyl group onto it. That's called methylation. So if you've heard of methylation, now you know what it is. And so for that, if you have a problem with that enzyme, then you may need extra SAMe, S-adenosyl methionine. It's called SAMe because it's big M, little e. So SAMe is the common name for it. And because that's the one thing that's required to methylate the histamine for the body to get rid of it.
All right. Very good stuff. This is all, yeah, all new to me. Like this isn't something you read about very commonly, but it sounds like this could be very helpful to people that may not have even known what was causing these problems. So do you want to go over that list again of what the symptoms are for somebody that might have a problem with their histamines?
Okay. Yeah. In the brain, histamine is a wake-up hormone. It's a hormone of alertness, or a neurotransmitter of alertness. So it causes, it prevents sleep, and it is so powerful. You can take all the sleeping pills you want, and you're not going to get good sleep, because it's much more powerful than well, actually, I had somebody who took antihistamines who said that worked, but even those don't work very well because they don't actually lower the level of histamine. Okay.
So
sleep.
Quick, before you move on from that, so you know when sometimes you go to bed at night and your brain is just racing, it can't turn off? Is that related to that at all, or is that something else? That might have been.
It's possible. That's not the only one that'll do that. There are other neurotransmitters like adrenaline, norepinephrine, epinephrine. They will do that too. So it's not the only one, but you know, if you have a cup of coffee and you think the caffeine is waking you up, well, the caffeine stimulates your adrenal glands and you make stress hormones. But on top of that, coffee and tea actually have a lot of histamine in them too. And so that can cause alertness and awakeness if you're not breaking it down in your intestines like you're supposed to. So for some people, like if they drink some coffee at night, then they won't sleep. And it may be the caffeine, but it also may be the histamine.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So number one, a symptom, a common symptom is alertness. It's not the only one, because if you have really good HNMT and not good DAO, you'll probably sleep really well, but you can get rashes all over your body and have intestinal problems and all that, but no problems in the brain, because the other enzyme that works in the brain might be methylating it and getting rid of it. So that's why it's not consistent. And that's why you have to look at, if you have one or more of the symptoms, you might consider looking into or trying a low histamine diet. So sleep problems, stomach problems, especially acid problems, acid reflux, gas, bloating, diarrhea, irritable bowel syndrome is a common issue. Peptic ulcer disease in the stomach is a common one. Rashes or allergies all over the body that aren't specifically related to one thing. Like some people have pollen allergies, and it makes sense. When they breathe in pollen, their nose gets stuffy and they get runny nose and all of that. But some people with their allergies to pollen are getting rashes all over their body. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. You know, where does that come from? Well, it's because the histamine is building up all over. So rashes, allergies, allergic symptoms of all kinds. Mm-hmm. I said stomach already, right? Oh, autonomic nervous system dysfunction, especially temperature. Histamine regulates your temperature. So if you have temperature instability or problems with regulating your temperature, like everybody, like you're always saying, oh boy, it's hot in here, isn't it? And everybody else is like, no, it's just you. Everybody automatically says, it's hormones. but it may
Heart
not be
functions.
hormones. Yeah, it might actually be histamine. That's one of the possibilities. Hormones do it too, and histamine. And actually the hormones, especially estrogen, can affect the level of histamine. So that's really interesting.
Okay. Well, good. I'm going to hand things off here. I have to jet to an appointment, but I'm going to hand things over to Leslie here to take over for Q&A and all that. So I wanted to hop on for as much as I could. So awesome. Thanks again, Dr. Saunders, and we'll see you guys next time. But yeah, have a good rest of the call. Get those questions in there, either in the chat or in the Q&A. Any questions that you have regarding type 2 or blood sugar or histamines or whatever, you got Dr. Saunders to yourself here for a while to get your questions answered. So, all right.
Thanks, Joe.
Guys.
Okay, quite a few questions about the actual diet itself. Where could someone go to find more information or recommendations about how to eat?
Oh, good question. Okay, so I have been looking all over the place, and it's really weird. I got to tell you, if you just Google low histamine diet, you will get 50 million pages of low histamine diets, and they're all different. And you're like, what the heck? Is there no consensus on what's low in histamine? Well, here's the problem. Low is relative. And what if your enzyme is functioning 80% and someone else's is functioning 20%? And they can't tolerate avocados, but you can. So then it's off their list, and it's on your list, and it's off their list. You know, so that's why lists can be so different, because you can't get rid of histamine. You just eat less of it. So one that was really helpful, it's a beginning starter handout that they give at the NHS, the National Health Service in Great Britain. And their handout is really good. And so it's on the NHS website. And if you just look at histamine intolerance, HIT, and for NHS, it's a PDF handout that has a brief explanation of what histamine intolerance is, how it happens, a little bit about the enzyme, and then it has some lists of foods, some simple lists of, okay, avoid these and eat these. And I just thought that was one of the better, easy ones. If you want more complex, there's whole websites. There are several doctors, that's all they do is histamine intolerance. And they have, of course, pages and pages and pages and pages of information on what histamine intolerance is and what the enzyme is and the two different enzymes and how you get SAMe and copper and blah, 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 all that other stuff that I kind of briefly explained to you. Yeah, you can research it all you want. I liked that, the one from the NHS. It was really simple, easy to understand, and a good start. Good start.
Okay. All right. That's good. Interesting question. Dr. Saunders and I actually talked about this last week. How does histamine affect Crohn's disease?
Oh, good question. Okay. Big time it can affect Crohn's disease. In fact, it could be a precipitating event for Crohn's disease where you could be doing perfectly fine and well, and then if you don't, if you take in excess histamine, then that causes swelling in the intestines. It causes inflammation in the intestines, just like an allergic reaction. You're having a literal allergic reaction inside your intestines. It's kind of like on your skin. And when it's swollen and hives all over, you can get the same thing internally and end up with lesions in there and bleeding and all those issues too with Crohn's disease. Now that's on the one side, getting too much histamine. The other side is, because Crohn's disease can happen anywhere from the mouth to the anus and anywhere through your intestines. If you have inflammation in there, you're not going to make DAO wherever there's inflammation going on. So then you're not going to tolerate histamine well. So that can exacerbate all your other symptoms, allergies or whatever else is going on. So it's really from both ends, this histamine intolerance with Crohn's disease is a bad combination. That's a hard thing to deal with.
Okay. And then from the same person, Martha is asking these questions. How does alcohol affect histamines? Or what is the correlation, maybe?
Okay. Wine has histamine. Beer has histamine. the distilled alcohols, I'm pretty sure don't contain histamine. But remember this, that alcohol always causes irritation in the stomach. So people get irritation in the stomach, and it also causes damage to liver cells. So every tiny bit of alcohol you drink damages liver cells. And so that toxicity could precipitate worse, like lower function of the enzyme and worse histamine intolerance. But staying away from, especially wine and beer, to avoid histamine is a really good idea all by itself. But then other alcohols, I just remember one person that I talked to that has been dealing with this for a while. She says she allows herself a periodic margarita and she's okay with that. But she can't have any wine and she can't have any beer.
Okay. How can you, this is from, I believe, Eve or Terry, how can you measure the level of histamines?
Okay, there are several ways to do it. They're not wonderful, but they're okay. So you can do the serum histamine level. And that is just, this is what your level in your blood is. So that's a blood test. Or you can do a urine test. And it's supposed to be better to do the 24-hour urine test. So you collect your urine for 24 hours, and then you get a total amount of histamine that you've excreted in 1 day. So during that 24-hour period. And the reason that's a little better is because you shouldn't be excreting very much histamine. Now, there should be like little to none excreted, because the enzyme in your kidneys should be getting rid of that. So you should have none. However, that's not necessarily, what's in your urine is not necessarily indicative of what's in your blood, because because the kidney can inactivate the histamine and methylate the histamine to inactivate it. So they're not the same test. They're not equivalent. It's not just like you do one or the other. I've tried both of them, and I find the blood test to be a little more easy and a little more indicative of what's going on internally. Because if you're missing the DAO enzyme, your blood levels will be high, but you're not necessarily the urine levels, because the kidneys have the HNMT enzyme. It's a different enzyme. So that's a long explanation for, yeah, you can test.
Okay, this is good. Let's see. What causes the immune system to fight against the body? How is that reversed?
Okay. There is a lot. We should, in fact, we've done webinars on autoimmune, haven't we? Yeah, we have. I'm just going to give you a simple explanation. Is think of the immune system instead of as warriors, going out to fight with their guns and their antibodies, and they're going to kill, 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 kill. That's not really what the immune system is about. The immune system does not kill everything. In fact, what's really weird, if you do live blood analysis and people look under a microscope and they take your blood out and immediately look under a microscope, they find bacteria and yeast and fungus and viruses. And when you have like COVID-19, when you have an acute case of COVID-19, they look for how many million copies per cubic centimeter of blood. Million copies per cubic centimeter. I mean, we're talking about a lot of copies of that virus in this much blood. We're not talking about a few here and there. So the blood is not sterile. What the immune system does is the cleanup crew. So think of your immune system as janitors. So when you have like arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis or something, your antibodies are saying, we need to clean this up. This is not working right. This is not functioning right. And we need to clean this up. If you have autoimmune thyroid problems and you have TPO enzyme really elevated, the immune system is saying, we got all this excess enzyme around, we got to clean it up. So you make a whole bunch of antibodies so you can clean up all that extra TPO enzyme. Well, why do you have all that TPO enzyme? Well, one reason is if you don't have enough selenium, then the enzyme is non-functional. So if you're deficient in selenium, which most Americans are, and in fact, most Japanese are, where this Hashimoto's thyroiditis was first found, the cells keep making the enzyme, but it doesn't work, so they spit it out, and then they make some more. It doesn't work, they spit it out, and they make some more. It doesn't work, they spit it out. They keep spitting it out, and the immune system's going, we got all this excess TPO enzyme, let's clean it up. And so it's just the janitors cleaning up, and they're very specific to take that one out because that one's not supposed to be there. So in a better way to look at your immune system is the janitor cleaning up. And if you look at it that way, instead of they're fighting against you, it's like, oh, that means I'm making a mess somehow. Let's fix the mess. You know, like we had that faucet thing. Let's turn off the water so it stops spilling over the sink instead of just mopping.
I like that. That's good. Okay, here is a great question from Robert. Dear Dr. Saunders, my sister, a nurse at one time, says that fasting can cause ketoacidosis. Is this true? Will fasting damage kidneys? Your thoughts, please.
Okay. That's actually multiple questions together. Can fasting cause ketoacidosis? Absolutely. What is a keto diet? You're going ketoacidosis, right? Well, ketosis. You don't necessarily mean to be acidotic. The acid part is where you have excess organic acids being produced. And a lot of that is lactic acid. It's not just keto acids, but yes, you have ketones being produced. What that means is you can't burn sugar, so you're burning fat. And so when you're fasting or when you're on a keto diet, you stop taking sugar in and you start burning fat instead. And that causes you to make keto acids in your body. Those keto acids are mostly excreted in the urine, and that's okay. You can find them in the urine. But also your brain can use them in place of the sugar. So since you're not eating sugar, there's most of your brain, the cells can use those keto acids as I call it a low octane fuel. So if you think of sugar as a high octane fuel, it revs you up and fast. It gets you going really fast. It burns hot and goes fast. And the ketones are a low octane fuel. They burn slowly. And actually, this has been tested. You know, then when they tried to do a under 2 hour marathon, they found they couldn't give these marathon runners, they couldn't carbo load enough sugar to run 26.2 miles. So they had to start them on a keto diet so that they could burn fat for 26.2 miles, because 1 pound of fat will get you 26.2 miles. And everybody's got an extra pound of fat, even marathon runners. So, but what they found was, because it was a low octane fuel, they couldn't get the speed up. They couldn't maintain the speed for 26.2 miles. They needed some sugar to do that. So they found, like, I think the ratio was 20% carbs and 80% fat allowed them to get the full 26.2 miles and keep their speed up. Anyway, so when you're fasting, when you're on a keto diet, you make keto acids, and that's what you want. So the danger, the reason the nurse is saying, oh my gosh, you don't want ketoacidosis, is because when type 1 diabetics that have no insulin, when they're starving to death, when their cells are crying for sugar and they can't get any in because they don't have any insulin, then they go into something called ketoacidosis. And it can, because they have 100 trillion cells are all going, I want some sugar right now, and I can't get any in, and I can't get any protein in, all I have is fat, then you have a ton of keto acids all at the same time. And so that's a dangerous position to be in. So that's for type 1 diabetes and doesn't apply to type 2. Remember we talked about that last time, type 1, type 2, and then diabetes insipidus. The 3 names, diabetes, completely different illnesses. So what she's talking about is type 1, in which case you have to be really careful if you're going to be in ketoacidosis to make sure you're getting insulin. If you're on a keto diet, you can do it with type 1, but you want to make sure that you're getting enough insulin to keep your cells functioning.
Okay. And I think we'll just do a couple more questions here, guys. So make sure that you hop back on next week. If you haven't registered for this webinar, you can do so at bartonwebinar.com. You can see our past webinars. There's a link to YouTube to all of our webinars. This is episode number 59. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel from there as well. So there's also links to products that we mentioned, the diabetes solution kit, etc. So be sure to check that out, bartonwebinar.com. Here is a question from Krish. My friend has a chronic asthma problem. His doctor states he has acute anaphylaxis. Is that right?
Yeah.
It is
anaphylaxis.
Okay. I didn't know they could have it acute. Okay. He gets relief, but only symptomatically. Will DAO help chronic asthmatics?
It might. Okay. Thank you for asking that question. Chronic allergies, one of the issues may be that there's food being taken in that has histamine in it. And remember, it's additive. So if you're having allergies internally, the HNMT enzyme, that specific enzyme, is found in the respiratory epithelium. And if that one's not functioning well, then asthma is really easy to get, because all you have to do is get a little histamine. You can't break it down in that respiratory epithelium. So you're going to get what? Swelling, itching, cough, sneezing. And then this acute anaphylaxis is when the airways go and they swell up so much you can't get air through them. And that's deadly in some cases. Anaphylaxis can be deadly. It's not a minor issue at all. That's like a bee sting, swelling up, or eating the peanuts that you're allergic to and your throat swells up. And it can cause entire cardiovascular collapse. Anaphylaxis is not a minor problem. That's huge. And so a low histamine diet, adding the DAO, adding the copper, adding this S-adenosylmethionine, SAM-E, and being on the low histamine diet, those things will help this problem.
Okay, great. What should the measure or number be when testing histamines?
Well, it depends on which. So I do the serum test at 1. Less than 1 is normal, over 1 is high. The people that are high, I find to be 1.1, 1.2, 1.6. Or even if they're in the 0.9 range, I go, you know what, you're on the high side. You should just try the low histamine diet. The testing isn't the end all be all. Really, symptoms are a much better way to determine that, because it may not be swimming around in your blood so much. It may be more localized, causing the problem, like the asthma thing. You might have normal blood levels, but you can't break it down in your respiratory tract. So you start getting the problem in respiratory, even though your blood levels are normal. So it's not, I don't test everyone, but if I'm not sure and I think that's what it may be, then I do.
Okay, one more question. In what way does coffee cause blood sugar spikes?
Oh, okay. So coffee has methylxanthines in it and a lot of histamine, by the way. But coffee, because of its effect on the adrenal glands, causes resistance to insulin and allows the blood sugar to go up more. So even if you don't have any sugar in your coffee, or people who put, I don't know, stevia and stuff to sweeten the coffee, and they get this blood sugar spike, they're like, what the heck? I didn't put anything in my coffee, or all I had was some coconut oil in my coffee, or whatever. They do that kind of stuff. If it raises the adrenal hormones and causes insulin resistance, then you can't get the sugar into your cells and your blood sugar is going to go up. So that's a possibility.
Okay. Krish is wondering about, I think it was, unsweetened cocoa powder. Does that contain histamine?
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know that.
Okay.
I don't know that. I think I looked that up once, but I can't be sure enough to say I remember that. as far as histamine goes, yeah, cocoa powder, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. Everybody wants to make sure they get their chocolate, right?
There's something, yeah. If I can't have coffee, I gotta have my chocolate, hot chocolate. No.
Yeah.
I get it. No judging here. Okay, I think that's it for today, guys. We have a lot of questions. This was awesome. I know I learned a lot. I've been doing some thinking about this for my entire family, so this is very, very good. Thank you, Dr. Saunders, again.
You're welcome.
It's a pleasure. So any last things you want to mention as we wrap up?
No, I think I pretty much said it all.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, guys, come back next week. If we didn't get to your questions, we will do our very best to get to them next week. And I'm excited to chat about type 2 again next Tuesday at 12 noon Central. So we'll see you guys later. Thanks for joining.